Shinsegae has acquired AMUSE. Now, Shinsegae is a very, very famous conglomerate in Korea. They own lots of different things, including department stores. They do actually have quite a few beauty brands, but Shinsegae in Korea is synonymous with luxury. That's really how they've made their mark and what they are famous for in the local Korean market. And the news came through that they have acquired the K-beauty brand AMUSE. Now, if you're familiar with AMUSE, you might be thinking, okay, but that's not exactly a luxury brand. And you would be right. I would put AMUSE definitely in the mass market category. Lip tints are actually the brand's signature product, I guess. And they start from around 2만 won, which is 20,000 Korean won, which is quite cheap. If you think about the other brands that are in Shinsegae's portfolio, just for context, 2만 won would probably be around maybe like $15. Don't quote me on that. You'd have to do an exchange rate sort of calculation to get the precise value. But suffice it to say, it's not super expensive, a little bit more expensive maybe than the standard of a lip tint for other Korean brands, but AMUSE is definitely a value offering. And media reached out to me last week to sort of say, like, what's your take on this? What do you actually make of this acquisition? Does it make sense for the Shinsegae portfolio? And my take on it is this. I think it makes sense when you consider AMUSE's popularity, particularly among Gen Z. So it has a strong appeal overseas. It has a significant presence on social media too, which I know a lot of our listeners will probably have seen. So I did a quick check, and on TikTok, they have 1,004.7K followers. So a significant following on TikTok. And they also have 327,000 on Instagram. So this is not a small brand. They've made a name for themselves in a pretty quick amount of time. And I think the other thing is that these days, when it comes to acquisitions and growing a beauty brand, virality on social media has really become an important battleground. And so I think that on the one hand, this acquisition really does represent quite a significant departure from Shinsegae's previous acquisitions. If you take a look at other beauty brands that they've acquired, one of the ones that they acquired in 2020 was a brand called Swiss Perfection. And if you have a look on their website, you will see it is a completely different offering from anything that is really being done in K-beauty. Basically, the formulations are formulated, developed, and produced in Switzerland. So they're really tapping into that higher end of the market with the price points to match as well. So that was also done in furtherance of the company's global expansion ambitions. And that is really what they have been trying to do for the last few years. So they're not the only Korean conglomerate that has invested in this type of K-beauty brand. If you were listening to the show last year, you might remember that we spoke about Amore Pacific and the fact that they had acquired CosRx, and that brand they were hoping would help boost their popularity globally because CosRx already has a majority global following. So I think that this is a very interesting departure from the kind of strategy that they were previously following. For example, so Shinsegae's core business model is actually that they are a local importer of luxury brands, and they have a lot of really, really famous brands under their stable, Diptyque, Hourglass being some of them. And what they did is they actually acquired the trademark for a French brand, Poiret, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, all the way back in 2015. So they acquired this really heritage French brand. And in 2021, they actually then set about to make a line of Poiret branded cosmetics, and then they rolled them out in the Shinsegae department stores throughout Korea. And their plan was to run with that overseas as well. So that was kind of what they were hoping to do and how they were hoping to grow their brand globally. But acquiring AMUSE, I think, is quite a bit of a different proposition. They're taking a brand that has already made a market for itself, or met a market that already exists, probably more likely. And they've decided that that is a good in for them to kind of get in with the younger people, see what's happening on social media and grow that way. So that's basically what I said to when I was asked sort of for my take on it. Now, some of Shinsegae's own brands, they do actually have their own K-beauty brands as well. One that you may have heard of is Yunjak. So it's spelt like it should be Yunjak. It's Yunjac. It's still a smaller brand by Korean beauty standards. It has a modest following on Instagram, I would say, about 17.7K. And that brand is actually available in some Shinsegae department stores, a couple of Lotte stores, and Hyundai as well. But the brand has been steadily, I would say, increasing their sales since they launched. So they actually reported last year that their sales increased 79% year on year from January to October. And that was largely thanks to 2 products from their entire collection. 2 products did 50% of the brand's total sales. And that was their Skin Perfecting Protective Base Prep and their Whole Plant Effect Concentrate. Try saying that quickly 10 times in a row. But basically, the base prep product is the one that has been gaining a little bit of attention on social media from that line. That's been ranked first and second in the base and primer categories on a couple of different online platforms in Korea since its launch. But I would say they've only had moderate success with the K-beauty brands that they have launched themselves. So I think it's probably an interesting play, I think, that they've made by acquiring a brand that has kind of already got that buzz about it. But yeah, I was very interested to hear that. There are more acquisitions going on in the K-beauty space as well, which I think says everything we need to know about the value of the market, the value that brands are placing in, or rather conglomerates are placing in the acquisition of these brands. I think that's all a really good sign for the industry generally. AMUSE's hero product is the Dew Tint, which I'm actually wearing today. And they have a really good track record of sales, particularly in Japan. I definitely saw them when I was in Tokyo last year. They seem to be doing well. North America and Southeast Asia as well. So I think lip tints in particular, Korean lip tints are doing very, very well in the Japanese market. They're very popular. Another brand that does well in Japan is Romand. So look, I'm interested to see what exactly Shinsegae does with the brand now that they have acquired it, what their plans are. You would assume that this will not be where they stop if they're kind of in an acquiring mindset, if they're thinking about acquisitions of brands. But yeah, I thought that was interesting news. I thought that probably some of our listeners would be interested to hear about that as well. So I wanted to share that with you guys.